Hi, this is my reflection on exploring the Notebook LM file. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I found and some of the things that I explored on it. So, as a graduating senior, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about lately is my career future and my job future. So, I asked Notebook LM a little bit more about what being a data science would be like, and I thought it was interesting. It talked about how the data wrangling pipeline is typically divided into 6 stages. I think we've discussed this a little, but you have to discover the data, you have to structure it, clean it, enrich it, validate it, and then publish it. So there is a lot of different steps that you have to do to get the high quality analysis that you want. And it indicated that that process would take up about 80% of your time. And I know the data cleaning, kind of just from what we were doing in class, seems like it would take a while. Then you got to validate it, make sure everything is in order. But that was a good overview of what the, a day-to-day, a general day-to-day task might look like in such a career. I also asked it about what the major skills are in terms of coding languages you would need to be successful in a career as a data science, as a data scientist. And I think a lot of these languages were also on the mind map, but it mentioned Python, and being able to use pandas. It mentioned R, it mentioned SQL. One of the ones that it mentioned that I didn't know a lot about was an application called Scala, and I know that was also on the mind map, I believe. Um, and Scala is interesting because I never heard of it before this. It said it's a high-level programming language that integrates both functional and object-oriented programming paradigms. I thought its main purpose was to deal with big data environments and to process large amounts of data, as well as to facilitate machine learning and to help integrate when you're data wrangling. I thought that was interesting because first off, I'd never heard of that platform, and it just kind of shows you that there's a whole universe of other coding languages out there besides Python, R, and SQL, which I already knew about. Um, Another interesting thing I found in the career area was the database administrator job, um, which I guess requires a more specialized technical role um, and a DBMS specific programming. Um, and troubleshooting proficiency. Um, but I guess it's a role basically concentrated on maintaining databases, which would be an interesting specialization in all of this. I also explored some of the skills that were on the mind map and throughout the articles that Notebook LM was analyzing. I looked more into deletion. I thought it was interesting that there's sort of 2 categories of deletion. There's pairwise deletion and listwise deletion. Listwise deletion being removing an entire row if something is missing, whereas pairwise deletion is a little more conservative. It preserves more information by only ignoring missing values for the specific variables that you're currently analyzing. I thought it was interesting that you had those 2 categories. I don't understand this as well as I'd like to, but I thought it was interesting because it went on to talk more about the concept of pairwise stuff in general. There was a section brought up called pairwise comparison and deduplication, which has to do with comparing data points based on how similar they are, which I thought was interesting, and I'd like to learn more about it. It even mentioned sometimes data scientists give two individual items a numeric score ranging from 1 to 0. So I don't really understand that as well as I'd like to, but I do think it's kind of interesting. I also explored imputation and interpolation, which was a term I didn't know, so I wanted to look more into it. I sort of define it as basically being extrapolation because there's linear interpolation, which estimates a missing value by the values of its immediate neighbors, which sounds a lot to me like a linear extrapolation to find the data. But there are also, I guess, more advanced techniques like polynomial interpolation. So that was interesting to learn about. And one of the most interesting things for me was some of the data cleaning tools, which I looked into a little. These were other programming platforms that I maybe didn't have the most background in, so I did kind of have an incentive to look at them. And that SED was interesting because it just seems like the skills you would learn from SED are just so relevant. Like replacing string patterns you don't want. Whenever I work in Excel with large amounts of data and that, I know that's a big problem. Or in Power BI, I remember that was always an issue for me to do that, to get rid of or replace the string patterns I didn't want. Also, getting rid of things like parentheses, hyphens, and white spaces to bring items like phone numbers or dates into a uniform format. Getting rid of unneeded semicolons, carets, and pipe symbols. Again, that is the sort of thing that you really do want to know how to do. It made using Excel a million times easier once I learned how to do that stuff. So I'm definitely interested in that platform. And I guess it also sometimes gets paired with a command line utility called awk, which is used to restructure databases, for data normalization purposes, and for padding rows. And the two can kind of work together to help you with fixing up data.